As investors and as landlords in communal housing and student housing, we're always looking to see what levels of responsibility we can take to make things easy for our students and, of course, look after our assets, which are our properties and our tenants. In the scenario that we're facing at the moment, as students start returning back to their reses, as well as communal living spaces start filling up again, there are certain requirements, guidelines, processes, systems that we need to start looking at, planning for and preparing so that we can ensure that our places that are under our responsibility are as safe as possible and our tenants are knowledgeable about what we're asking of them to ensure that they keep safe as well as their fellow housemates. My name is Robin Booth. I'm a professional property investor as well as a coach and mentor for many students in South Africa and around the world. And we have units for both communal housing and student housing in Cape Town, Durban, Johannesburg, and really got together and thought, what are we willing to do and going to put in place to make sure that our units are safe for our tenants, our students, and of course for the professionals who work or live within them. No doubt we're all faced with certain challenges. We have an influx of students coming back or will start to come back as lockdown eases. Obviously, as people can move back to certain places, we're going to see again a congregation of people that are going to be sharing spaces, toilets, bathrooms, kitchens, living areas, study areas, and there needs to be some structure that we're going to need to put in place. We have found that in managing student housing and communal living spaces successfully, it is our job to actually put those structures in place and not leave it up to the students or the housemates to determine what they feel is best. In our experience, they're actually looking for a structure to overlay, and this really is our responsibility and our opportunity to provide the structure for them as to the guidelines in many different areas. I got together with many of my student coaching clients, and we thought, what are the logistics that we're facing with? And what we've come up with are a couple of ideas that we're implementing, and of course we're wanting to share this with you so that you too can look at this, adapt it, and implement it in your units. We consider that this is going to range between 4 tenants, 4 housemates, up to 30 in a building. Whether it's a house, an apartment block, or an actual complex. But we feel that the logistics around it are actually going to be very similar. And of course, the biggest challenge for us is how to accommodate the wide range of different types of student housing and communal living spaces they are. And this is really referring to what is the one thing that all of these buildings and units will have in common, such that whatever the policies are, there actually is a cohesion amongst that, and it can be applicable to all those different units that we're talking about. So some of the things we really looked at to see how we could minimize the entrance of the virus into the house, as well as the continual safety of the housemates when someone goes out to do shopping, and of course in the event of a crisis or of someone actually getting the virus and being infected, how do we manage that? And we came up with a wide variety of solutions. We kind of thought we can give sanitizer packs, we can put in air, the sanitizing tunnels that as you walk through the door, it sprays everyone and disinfects them. And of course, some of these are just way out of the economic bracket for anyone. So we really thought, well, hang on, what have we got available? How can we manage this? And what are the appropriate guidelines for us to put in place? And I think this is what we've come up with. And as I said, it's a great starting point for you to take and to share. And the following pack, which you can download and use and adjust for your specific unit, really is going to be helpful to give you an indication of what we feel is necessary. But more importantly, give your students and your communal living tenants an indication of actually what they can be doing and to stay safe and to be empowered. So in the pack, we've got a couple of different topics, guidelines, which we cover. Definitely guidelines for keeping safe and virus-free within the house, guidelines for leaving the house to go into public spaces. This is when they're going shopping and everything that needs to be done about that. And of course, the guidelines for returning back to the house in making sure that they can clean as much as possible before coming in, and of course, not touching doors and light switches and just all those challenges that we can see are ripe for this to happen. And then there's guidelines for suspecting that a housemate may have a virus, and of course guidelines if a housemate actually does have a virus and how we're going to manage that and empower them to actually take control of that. Also included in the pack is a printable set of questions which we put up in our communal spaces, just again jogging the behavioral tasks of the tenants as they move through the spaces, really just checking, have you got your mask, have you got your gloves, have you disinfected the surfaces, just again to make this education process really powerful for them and to ensure again that we are doing what we can to create the safety in our places. That you can download. That's right next down on the page. You can certainly just download that. You can change it if you want to, or my suggestion is you can actually just send it straight to them, because included in that are also how to identify the symptoms, what to do if you feel that you've got the symptoms, what are the local hospitals in the area that are dealing with COVID-19, and of course a whole lot of other emergency contact numbers that might be useful for your students and your communal living tenants if they're going to be needing it. So again, we're wanting to ensure that they've got resources to actually manage this. Besides the pack, these are also the things that I am doing personally, and I've suggested to all of my students as well that they do the same, and it seems like it's actually going to be working very effectively, is we actually need to be really upfront and honest about what is going on in these places as it emerges, and we want to find out from each and individual tenant that we have a certain number of preferences or choices. So in each scenario, we have reached out to every single tenant and we have actually asked them, what do you want to do in the event that you get the virus? Are you wanting to stay in the house and self-isolate, or are you preferring to look to go somewhere else, to, for example, go back to their parents or move to some other place if they're able to? That's really important. We need to know what their preference is. We also need to ask them, what are you wanting to do if someone else in the house is infected? Do you want to stay, or do you want to also go out and stay with someone else until this subsides in the household? So again, we need to know what their preferences are. Now, of course, this is all going to have to be within the applicable laws at the time about moving or staying with other people, and that will vary over time, but we still feel we need to know what their preference is. The third one, of course, is who do they need to contact, or who would they like for us to contact in the event that they either get it, or who should know if they should get it, because sometimes it could be that a parent may say, like, actually, they have a decision-making process over what the student is, because remember, the student is under 21, therefore has a legal guardian in this scenario, and may very well actually have a different perspective on what needs to happen. Which therefore actually brings us to the next question, which is the management of the parents, especially if you're dealing with students who are also their fees are paid, the rent's paid, and of course there's a whole other obligation for myself as a landlord to those parents in keeping their children safe, which is we've also created then WhatsApp groups per unit, and it's per building or house that the unit's in, and we've put the parents onto that because we're also needing to find out from them and to assure them that this is what we're doing. You will probably have noticed over the while of a lot of the posts that I've been sharing is that myself and my business are very proactive in making sure we have open communication and really are proactive in dealing with things, because that gives credibility, gives a sense of safety, gets a sense of stability, and that is what people are looking for now. So with us reaching out to the parents and saying, this is what we're doing. Here is a copy of the guidelines. Here is what we're going to do if such a situation arises, really does two factors. One is it gives them a sense of, okay, these guys are doing something really, really well and are professional, and I feel a lot safer. And secondly, I know that if I don't do this, I'm going to get an influx of messages from parents saying, is my child safe? What are you doing? Because they're living in another part of the country. They are not necessarily hearing the truth of what's going on with their children. And my experience is I definitely want to make sure that I'm preventing as much of this clutter communication as possible. So we've created WhatsApp groups just for those parents, and obviously doing them as just admin-only messages. So we're just using it to convey information, not to open up a chat, because that is actually going to be more difficult to manage if there's a back and forth and a whole lot of other stuff. So this is just around us conveying the information. On top of that, also, if you haven't done already, which I always suggest for any management of any group, that you should already have WhatsApp groups for your units. If not, then set them up, because that's really useful for internal communication and especially for sharing the status of what's going on. In many of my units, I have experienced that Sometimes students don't even know who is in the room next door, even though they're in a communal living space. It's the degree to which I know they know each other and what's going on, I can't just assume. So we've always had WhatsApp groups per unit as well, in which we frequently contact. But specifically in this case, we're suggesting you have those. If you haven't got, make them, so that if something happens, you can quickly inform everyone else, because that is really what is important. If someone in the unit is suspected of being infected or has it, there's a responsibility from the rest of the group to actually do something about it. That's at least what I'm proposing to my groups, because someone will need to look after that person in the sense of getting their food, helping them if they're actually really out and need to be self-isolated. So who's going to cook for them? So all of that is actually outlined in the policies and process guidelines that we have made available to you. And therefore they need to know what are they willing to do or going to do to actually ensure that the safety of the house is still in place, as well as they are supporting their fellow housemates and communal living tenants in this process. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from all of this, again, is that things are going to change, things are going to adapt. By no way have we created these documents as legal documents, as this is what the World Health Organization or anyone else is proposing how you manage communal living. This is just coming out of our own personal experience of managing these units, as I said, around the country, and really just putting our hats on and saying, what can we do at least just to make this work? And therefore, please treat these as guidelines. Add the elements that you think would work better for your individual unit or building. You may find that you have certain entrances or communal spaces or things which would better fit or suit you. So please add them in. Perhaps your own contact details in the documents if you need to, or you can just send it like this to them so that they can actually read through this. And I strongly recommend that you urge them to actually go through the document, because all of that is incredibly relevant to them, and to keep those communications open. If you feel there are certain points that are relevant and that we could add to this document, then please do let me know. Then we can add it and then republish it, such that we can keep evolving this and, of course, ensuring the safety of our assets as well as all of our tenants. Be safe, be well, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side.